Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive into language. So for today's episode, we're going to be focusing on restaurant English, which is always a fun topic.
Absolutely.
And to help us sort of break this down, we have a really interesting source. It's a clip from an English language learning podcast.
Oh, wow.
And in this podcast, they have a dialogue
Yeah.
between a waiter and a customer.
Okay.
And it is a little awkward at times, but we can learn a lot
For sure.
from these kind of awkward interactions.
Yeah, I think those real-world scenarios are really valuable.
Absolutely.
Because it's one thing to learn phrases from a textbook,
Right.
but to hear how people actually use them in a natural setting,
Yeah,
that's where the real learning happens.
exactly. So
Like-
let's set the scene a little bit.
Okay.
We have Fabio, who's our waiter, and then we have this customer who, I don't know, he's not the best customer. He's a little bit difficult.
Right.
But again, there's a lot we can learn from him.
like it.
So, think about this. You're at a restaurant. You've got the menu. And the waiter comes up to you
Yeah.
and says, are you ready to order?
Right.
And you need a moment.
Right.
You're not quite ready.
Totally.
So one of the phrases that they use in this podcast is, I'm still deciding.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right. And they also use, I'm still working on it.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, which is a nice kind of alternative.
It is.
But in this case, our customer doesn't use either of those. He says, this menu isn't even in English,
Oh, my goodness.
which is not quite the right response.
No, not
I mean,
yeah.
he is speaking English.
He is.
So it's clearly an English menu.
Yeah, that's not setting a good tone.
No, it's not. But it does highlight how important tone and delivery are.
Absolutely, because even if you have the right phrase, if you say it in a rude or whiny way,
Yeah,
it's going to come across wrong.
it's not going to have the intended effect.
Exactly.
Okay, so next up, we have the word complimentary, which you hear a lot in restaurants.
I do.
And it basically means free, right?
Yes, it does.
You know, like a complimentary bread basket,
Oh, yeah.
or maybe like a little amuse-bouche
Oh, yeah.
from the chef.
Yeah. You know what, though?
What?
I think there's something interesting about that word complimentary.
Oh, really?
It's not just about the free stuff. It's almost like a little psychological trick.
A trick.
Think about it.
Okay.
Have you ever gotten something complimentary at a restaurant and then felt like you had to order more or tip more?
Oh, yeah. Like,
You almost feel obligated.
yeah. Like, they've done something nice for me.
Exactly.
Now I got to return the favor.
Exactly. It's fascinating how a single word can influence our behavior like that.
It really is. So next time you hear complimentary in a restaurant,
Yeah.
just be aware they might be trying to get you to spend more.
It's all part of the game.
It really is. Okay, so let's say you're ready to order
Right.
and you've decided on the steak frites.
Ooh, good choice.
Now, instead of saying something really formal like, I would like to order the steak frites,
Yeah.
you can try a more casual approach.
Okay. How would you do that?
You could just say, I'll go with the steak frites.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's a lot more relaxed.
It is. It just rolls off the tongue.
It does. It feels very natural.
So would you say that's appropriate for any restaurant?
That's a good question. I think it depends on the vibe.
Okay.
If it's a really fancy place, you
Yeah.
might feel a little too casual,
I could see that.
but
Yeah.
it's more of a relaxed atmosphere. Yeah, I'll go with would fit right in.
I think so, too. It's all about reading the room, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to match your language to the setting.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like choosing the right outfit. You wouldn't wear a ball gown
Okay.
to a
Right.
barbecue.
Exactly.
So speaking of casual, that brings us to our next word, which is grab.
Okay.
Now, grab is a very versatile word.
Oh, yeah.
You can use it in lots of different situations.
For sure, you can grab a coffee
Right.
on your way to work or grab a bite to eat
Yeah.
during your lunch break.
Absolutely.
You can even grab a book from the library.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great word.
It is. And it usually implies like something quick and informal.
Yeah, like you're not spending a lot of time on it.
Exactly. But in this podcast, our customer, he uses grab in a way that's a little off.
Uh-oh.
He says, thanks, but I think I'll just grab a burger across the street.
Oh, no.
And it just sounds so abrupt
Yeah,
and almost rude.
it does.
Like he's not even considering what Fabio has to offer.
Right, it's like he's dismissing him.
Mm-hmm. And I think this brings up an important point
Okay.
about how we interact with service staff.
Mhm.
Like even in casual settings, there's still a certain level of courtesy that's
Absolutely.
in it.
We should always treat people with respect,
Right.
regardless of their job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, put yourself in Fabio's shoes. How would you feel if someone said that to you?
Oh, I would feel terrible.
Yeah. Okay, so before we move on, I want to point out something that the podcast hosts did
Okay.
that I thought was really clever. After they broke down all the key phrases, they actually replayed the entire dialogue.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. And I think that's a great way to reinforce the learning.
Yeah, because you get to hear everything in context.
Right. You're not just focusing on individual words.
Right.
You're hearing how they all fit together
Exactly.
in a real conversation.
I like it.
So we've talked about, I'm still citing, complimentary, I'll go with, and grab. But I think there's a bigger takeaway here.
What's that?
It's not just about memorizing phrases.
Okay.
It's about understanding the cultural context in which they're used.
That's so important.
Yeah, language and culture they're intertwined.
They are.
You can't really separate them. What might be considered polite in one culture could be totally rude
Yeah.
in another culture. And we have to be aware of those nuances.
Absolutely, especially as language learners.
Right. It's about being respectful, adaptable, and willing to learn from our interactions with others.
For sure.
Like it's that old saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
I love that saying.
Right. But in this case, it's more like, when dining out, speak and act with cultural awareness.
Well said.
What's so fascinating to me is how these seemingly simple phrases can reveal so much about a culture's values
That's true.
and communication styles.
For example, the phrase "I'll go with" that we talked about earlier, that kind of reflects a preference for informality
Yeah.
and indirectness
Right.
in certain situations.
It's like you don't want to be too direct.
Exactly.
You want to kind of soften things.
It's all about being polite and creating a pleasant experience.
Yeah, and that makes sense, especially in a restaurant setting
Right.
where you want everyone to feel comfortable.
Exactly.
I never really thought about it that way before. But it's true, like these little phrases, they can tell us so much
They really can.
about a culture.
And this is just the beginning. There's so much more to explore.
Exactly, like every language
Hmm.
is a window into a different culture,
I love that.
a different way of seeing the world.
Beautifully said.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
let's just take a moment to appreciate the power of language.
Mhm.
It's more than just words. It's a bridge that connects us to different cultures, different perspectives, and ultimately to each other.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Now, before we move on to our final thoughts, let's do a quick recap of what we've learned so far.
Sounds good.
So we've explored some essential restaurant phrases like I'm still deciding, complimentary, I'll go with, and grab.
Yeah.
But we've also discovered something even more important,
We cut.
that language is about more than just words.
Okay.
It's about cultural awareness, respect, and using our words to create positive and meaningful connections with others. And we've also learned that even a slightly awkward restaurant encounter can be a valuable learning experience. It can.
So as we head into our final segment, I want you to think about this.
Okay.
How would you have handled this restaurant situation differently? What phrases would you have used? And how would you have ensured that your communication was both clear and culturally sensitive?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it's like putting ourselves in his shoes for a second,
Right.
and thinking, how would I have reacted in that moment?
Exactly.
But it's all about practice, right?
It is.
The more you practice these phrases, the more comfortable you become.
Absolutely. And, you don't have to be perfect.
Right.
It's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah, everyone makes mistakes.
Everyone.
It's part of the learning process.
Exactly. And you know what I find really inspiring
What's that?
is that language learning, it's a journey that never really ends.
Ooh, that's deep.
It is.
I like that.
There's always something new to discover, a new nuance to master, a new perspective to embrace.
Yeah, it's like we're lifelong explorers,
Exactly.
constantly, discovering new things.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
About language and about different cultures.
And as we wrap up our deep dive today,
Mm.
I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to stumble over pronunciations, to feel a little awkward at times.
Right.
Embrace those moments.
Yeah,
They're all part of the process.
I agree.
And often they're the moments we remember most vividly.
That's true. The ones where you kind of mess up
Yes,
Those are the ones that stick with you.
exactly.
So it's like learning to ride a bike.
Okay,
You're going to fall a few times,
right.
but eventually you find your balance,
You get back up.
and then the joy of the ride outweighs the fear of falling.
I love that analogy.
Right. And it's the same with language.
It is.
The more you practice, the more confident you become,
Mhm.
and the more you can enjoy the journey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So get out there, practice those phrases, strike up conversations, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Yes, have fun. Well, on that note, I want to thank you all for joining us for this deep dive into restaurant English.
It's been a pleasure.
We've explored some useful phrases, uncovered some cultural nuances, and hopefully inspired you to continue your language learning adventures.
Absolutely.
So until next time, keep those ears open, those minds curious, and those tongues ready to tackle those new phrases.
That's a great way to end it.